What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. This has been one that's been circled on my calendar for a while. Bringing back a repeat guest. I've got Danny Eller in the studio, and you know what? I'm so grateful for the life that I have and the work that I do, and because the people that have come into my life and the people that I've got to work side by side with. And Danny, man, he's one of my favorite people of all time, one of my favorite guests ever. Just a flat out difference maker. And so it's so cool when you get to work with people like that and just see them like rise to the occasion. And man, the podcast episode number 89, I think it was called Growth Under Fire. And it's just a phenomenal episode. Phenomenal clips. You'll learn so much out of it. And I'm so excited because it's been a couple of years. It literally was 2 years, a little bit over 2 years ago that he was in the studio. December 29th, 2022 is when that episode came out. And so I'm super excited because there's been so much growth, so much change. Kids growing up and, more kids and, so it's super cool. I'm pumped. So Danny, man, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me back.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Again, like I said,
I didn't fudge it up the first go around. Got the invite back.
Dude, there was like some of like cutting your clips and putting your clips out there were some of my favorite ones. Like the talking about being in your room, like grounded, watching the kids play.
Way too much about my childhood and growing up, but
it's all the stuff that like makes you who you are.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, you said 2 years. I feel like I was such a little baby 2 years ago in this world of, this family business.
Yeah.
So much. I just feel like like you alluded to, I've done so much growing. It's crazy. The company's grown. I've grown. I wasn't sitting on the leadership team for Populist when we met last.
Yep.
That's changed. I think I've been on there for like a year and a half. It's its own ball of wax, right? Like I remember being asked, like, are you ready? Do you want to be on the leadership team? I think I was asked like twice before I actually said yes, because I felt like I want to be ready for that. And really, I don't think I've ever been like truly ready for anything I've ever done in my life. Yeah. I just, I do it. And we probably talked about that on the last podcast. I could just get thrown into it. But this was something where I was like, I want to, when I get in there, I don't want to make an ass of myself. You know what I mean? I want to feel good about joining that team. And I think even when I joined it, I was still a little bit like, tentative, but we got in there, we did it.
Yeah.
So over a year now for sure that I've been on that team. Cause we run on EOS and we do the quarterlies and the annuals, and I've been to one leadership annual. So it's probably like a year and a half. Yeah.
So I know you have a background in sports,
mm-hmm.
and when you look at that, do you see it like kind of like when you first start playing a sport and the game is kind of fast, or what was that like when you first got in it?
Got on that team, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Were you more prepared than you thought you were?
Maybe, yeah, because I think I had been asked maybe like 3 or 6 months prior, and then I was asked again, and I declined again after some thought. And then, but part of it was also like I was just selling my tail off, right? And I felt like I was doing well at that. And I was nervous to throw something else into the mix, something that I knew if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it well. If I throw that into the mix, how's it going to affect this that I'm doing over here that I feel like I'm doing pretty well at? I'm still even learning a lot on that front, right? Yeah. So going back to your question, was I ready? Yeah, I think I was, but I made a conscious effort to be quiet, which is hard for me. Ask my parents. But I take this from Matt, my brother, who
Yep.
Who's like the yin to my yang and knows when to be quiet when I often don't. And so I remember having a couple conversations with him before I got on that team, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to observe. I'm going to be strategic about when I choose to open my mouth and what I say. And because when I say things, I don't want to just feel like I'm on my soapbox, or whatever it is. So I took it slow, I think is how I would put it best, and which is not something that I do well.
How was it? And that's like growth in itself, right? Because we talk about
Absolutely.
like, a couple years ago and where you were at. And like, well, I had one of my biggest mentors in my life had said to me at one point, the coolest thing about aging is like, you still remember your thoughts and where you were, when you were here. But now you're here and there's a gap, hopefully,
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, that has, transcended through my life, basically, that slow down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would love to move at breakneck speed. I think that's where like I'm most comfortable, is fast, right? At my speed, right? It's not at someone else's speed. I'm learning that with kids.
Yeah.
That they're not moving at my speed. My kids are not moving at my speed as bad as I'd want them to move at my speed. But I think like in those moments, you're a bit short-sighted. Like you don't see everything that's going on, and parents, like, people who have raised children and their children are out of the house and whatnot, they will tell you to slow down. They will tell you to savor those moments. They will, they'll remind you about that stuff. And in the moment you're like, man, I can't wait for my kid to walk, or I can't wait for my kid to be in T-ball, or, whatever it is.
Yep.
So yeah, slowing down. It's like the main theme in my life for the last 2 years. If there was like one overarching theme, it's probably slowing down. Yeah.
What's that been like?
I mean, it's tough, man. That's a mental battle for me, I think. But it's a necessity, right? Because so I've listened to a few different books since we met last, and did this, and let's take business for example, right? One of the books that I'm actually currently listening to it. So we do on leadership, we do a book club. So per quarter we listen to a book or read a book. It's listen for me because I'm on the road so much.
Yep.
But it's Predictable Success is the book by Les, and I'm not going to remember his last name, but it's a good book. I'm not that deep into it, but my dad, Mike, has already read it, and so he assigned it because he's on that leadership team. So listening to that, like there's stages to business growth, right? There's like, I forget the name of the beginning stage, but that's like you're literally just fighting to stay alive. Mm-hmm. Then there's the fun stage when things are growing and popping and people are having fun. White water, where like growth is happening could be happening at a rate that is hard for like operations and whatnot to keep up on.
Rough.
Yes, choppy, right? Like customers are now like where you were bending over backwards and doing everything for your customers. Now it's maybe you're seeing a little bit of attrition, right? Maybe you've lost a couple customers or something like that. We experienced that probably about 2 years ago, like either around the last time we were on together or maybe shortly after that.
Yep.
And I think that, if you don't slow down and like look at what's going on, dig into what might be causing some of, the pain that you're experiencing, and then formulate a plan to fix that or get out of that, right? Because what you want to come out of Whitewater is to predictable success, where you can predict, the success that's going to follow, and it's repeatable. And then there's some other stages. Obviously, I'm not that far into the book, but like he references like treadmill, where people kind of like fall asleep. They're on autopilot. They're just doing whatever, right? Yep. And then decline and a death rattle or something like that, right? So I'll have to follow up with you once I've read it all. But it's we were moving at a speed. I was selling at a speed that was pretty incredible, one that I had didn't even anticipate.
Yeah.
Brought on a lot of customers, but we did see some attrition along the way. And, part of that was maybe the customer wasn't a right fit for us, but there were some things we had to dig into on our end as well. But you have to slow down in order to do that. You really can't, I've heard this expression before, but you really can't build the plane while you're flying it.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can try.
Pretty scary.
Yeah.
In the air and
you're operating on some wing, right? And
yeah.
you're already flying. But man, I don't think you can do it well. So you got to slow down, right? And I've been reminded of that multiple times in the business world. Because now, since 2 years ago, I'm now sitting in a director seat and rather than just a sales seat.
Yeah.
But I am still doing like a bulk of the selling. So things aren't happening as quick because I have other things going on over here right now. I'm on leadership. Now I'm also managing 2 people in like a marketing and brand specialty realm,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you only have so much bandwidth. If you're doing things over here, things over here are not getting the same attention. Big customers take longer to acquire. And I want it like this.
I remember when we first met. When we first met, it's like,
Yeah.
It's taking this long.
I know, dude. It's like, you're like, come on now.
You're like calling them over and over again. Yeah.
Am I going to be a pest? Am I going to bug them? No, it's definitely like the size deal that I've worked since. I mean, I started when we were working together is when I started working on the big stuff is what I would call it, right?
Yep.
Took us to Toledo.
Yep.
Some of the biggest stuff I've closed was around that time. Since then, it's been a lot more of that, less of the smaller customers. And, as we grow, our target customer changes, like who we can service best changes.
Yep.
We'd be remiss to say, yeah, we can continue to service the smaller outfit that maybe a mom and pop operation is going to be be able to better serve. You have to adjust to what you're best at serving, right? And what your business model looks best to serve.
Yep.
So with doing that, yeah, less of the smaller stuff happens. The smaller stuff typically happens quicker. The bigger stuff takes the big customer that we took on down in the Toledo branch that really changed things for our company. From the time I met with them at a discovery meeting with them, I believe, and it was like an 1.5 hour long meeting, which to me said something. I'm like, who? I go into this room, it's like 8 facility engineers sitting in the room. I'm like, I've never been in a situation like this in my life. I'm sitting at the head of the table. It's just me and my director of ops, Steve Hamill.
Yeah.
And I got a list of questions that I had written down before the meeting. So it was like an hour and a half meeting. And they're like, yeah, we're building a new site. And we've been doing business over here with this vendor, but, it might be time to try a change, right? Like, not like we're going to offload this, but with this new site, we'll give you a shot. It's like, okay, great. Well, construction in today's world, I don't know how it was pre-COVID because I wasn't operating in this world much pre-COVID, but everything takes longer than they say it's going to take.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're like, oh, yeah, we're going to be done, November of 23. So, yeah, actually, I might have had that conversation with them. Yeah, it was 22 I had that conversation with them because they're like, oh, we'll be done November of 23. Well, they weren't. So, you're already waiting all that time to try and be included in an RFP.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't happen until later. You march through the process. And at one point, I thought maybe we weren't going to get it. You're up against other vendors. And they have an incumbent who's servicing their other facilities. They didn't lead on like they were altogether unhappy with the incumbent. So you're like, okay, are they just trying us for an extra bid or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like I threw every Hail Mary that I had to throw to finally win that deal. And when I finally won it, when we finally got it, there were multiple presentations that happened along the way. Like we present on our quotes. We always try and present on our quotes. We find that just works out better for everybody. The whole email and the quote. I know a lot of organizations do that, and I've participated in some of that. Usually I try and ask the question like, are we going to get a chance to have a meeting about it if you like what you see, or is this like, you're just trying to gauge how invested are they too, right?
Yeah.
Like, so multiple meetings, presentations. We actually ended up having to go back and draw it up even just a little bit different than we had drawn up originally. We finally got it. I think all said and done, it was like over a year and a few months that it took to get that done. And then we got 2 more facilities through them in a matter of 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Equal kind of size.
Yeah. One was basically the same size. The other was a bit smaller. But definitely, crazy growth that way. In that stint of time, right? Like in 6 to 8 months. When you feel like you worked for eternity before that.
Yeah.
Just to get your foot in the door with one site, right?
Well, and to take it back, I remember being on the leadership team with Populist, and that whole year, one of the goals was to open another branch.
Yeah.
And it was like, where is that branch at? And I remember there was never any strategic, let's go to Toledo.
No.
And you just kind of got an opportunity.
Yep.
Landed but it's cool how that just kind of happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to keep some of the ideas I have in my back pocket as far as where we could go.
Yeah.
Because I just put like feelers out there, right? Like I got feelers out in Lansing. I had some feelers out in Toledo.
Yep.
I've got parameters in which I have to look for this stuff. Like don't go a certain amount of time or miles from a certain branch office, right? So I got hard and fast stops that way. But then I got to go, okay, here's something big that we could go after that could take us to this place. Because you're not going to go there for
a small job.
Exactly, because you can't sustain that. And that would be a disservice to the customer.
Yep.
But to build a branch, you got to have something big to start. You got to have what we would call an anchor. Build the spokes around that, right? So we got what we needed. But funny was the anchor in Toledo that started us is still a fraction of the size of the deal I just explained to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome because I remember that was a big deal.
It was my biggest at the time.
Yeah. That's dude, that's so awesome. I love to see that.
It's pretty cool, man. When you do that, though, you're like,
that's so freaking cool to if somebody's listening, because I remember how big of a deal that was. It was like the biggest deal in 40-year company history, and then you're now pulling in deals that are even bigger than that.
Yeah, 2 times the size. And then when you look at that customer, it's over 2 times the size, right? So, yeah, you do that, and I think I'm again, this goes back to me just operating so quickly and not slowing down and maybe savoring certain moments in my life. I think even looking back to that, and this is what you're talking about, your brain is different now, and you can look back to thoughts you had at the time where I'm like, okay, what's next? And you're like, dude, you just did all this. Can you just sit down for a minute and enjoy it?
Yeah.
But I was like, what's next?
But so that's what makes you successful, though. Because some people don't have that,
right?
Those driven people, like a Michael Jordan wins a championship. He's not thinking, "Oh, good, now I can go relax." And he's like,
right.
There's this book by Tim Grover who,
Relentless.
Oh, Relentless.
Yeah, I've been a minute since I listened to it, but yeah.
But he talked about how Michael Jordan, after winning the championship, was in the locker room saying, tomorrow we got to get in this program.
It's back to the grind, man.
Back to the grind.
Yeah.
Because there's more.
There is. I think there's a happy medium to acknowledge what you've accomplished.
Yeah. Yep.
I think I still struggle with that, though. Maybe, with age and experience, that'll continue to be better. But there's also a happy medium when, if it's just me, it's one thing, but it's not just me. It's the whole company. So, I was challenged with that at my first leadership annual offsite where, we go and we do our things. You were part of one.
So cool.
Which I'm kind of bummed that we were never part of one together.
Man, I know.
That would have been fun. But so we went and did one actually at Christine's place in Birch Run.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's such a sweet setup.
Yeah.
So shout out Christine.
Shout out to Christine for sure. We were just talking about a guy.
I listened to it. You just had her on not that long ago, and I listened to it. It was great. Yeah.
She's awesome.
So we had that there. And one of the things I was challenged with, we did an exercise which was at first I was like raising my eyebrows at this exercise because I was like, how's this going to play out? But it was like, say a part of it, I'm not going to remember all of it, but part of it was you're going to challenge each person, say something you admire about them, but also something you'd wish that they'd do a little more of or do less of or do better, right?
Yep.
One of the things I was challenged with, and it may have been by my own brother, was I wish you would slow down and think, and I'm paraphrasing, so don't beat me up on this, Matt. Slow down and think about how what you do affects the whole company, like in its entirety.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm moving the needle on new sales, right? Especially at that time, I was still moving the needle. At the annual, I wasn't even in the director's seat yet. So was still just, nose to the grindstone selling. So, I took that to heart and I'm thinking about that. And 2023 was a very turbulent year for us because we had a lot of growth and a lot of different customers that we took on. And I watched that affect operations.
Yeah.
I'm very close to the DO, Steve. And I just watched the toll that kind of took on everybody. It was fun for me. But whatever. You got to think about the whole team. And so 24 was a little different because it was a big customer and a couple big sites through them and maybe like one or two other customer acquisitions in that sense where we onboarded them, but not nearly the breakneck turbulent speed that the year prior was.
We talked about it a little bit in Christine's episode, the book Shine, and I think you'd get into this book really well. So Gino Wickman wrote it along with his partner Rob Dubay, and I got to do some work with them on this program a lot. They actually use this studio too, and it's for driven people, and it's called the 10 Disciplines, and it's the disciplines on how to basically as a driven. So like you're a driven person for sure. So like there's like 10% of the world that's like on this driven spectrum, and they're the ones that create all the great things. Think like Steve Jobs, for example. They're out there creating all the things, but they also create the most havoc and chaos,
right?
Because they're out driving and doing, and like you got this vision of like what you're working on.
Right.
And then you look back and like everything's on fire because you're like they're trying to hire people and fill roles and
Right. There was definitely a stress there. And even I was feeling some of it because at that point it was kind of when I was brought on to leadership. And like I said, we had lost some customers and we're like, why? What's going on here? We need to dig into what's, the reasoning behind this. Where are our shortcomings? Were these still good fit customers for us? Or did they need to be with a different company providing their cleaning services? So a lot of reflection and, looking inward that way. And that you can take that into, every realm of your life. And my impatience has flown into every realm of my life. And I've had to take that, slowing down and being patient and reflection that has to transcend throughout my whole life. And it has. And I think God pushes that on me or forces that on me.
Like you're getting the over redundant message, like to be in the role you're in.
Yeah.
And then to like really start gaining building the clients that you're building, knowing that those are long-term. That's a test of patience all in itself.
Oh yeah, man. It's just, when you take a step back and look at all of it, you're like, wow, he's telling me slow down everywhere in business and, with my expectation on my kids.
Yeah.
All of that, you gotta just, okay. And I think back, I'm just not thinking of this, but my grandmother would just always be like, slow down, dearie. Slow down. And at 16, I'd blow that off like it was nothing. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But you can only do that for, so long. And it's at the expense of something, and you don't see it in the moment, but eventually that surfaces. So, Yeah, it's been good, man. I've had to grow up a bit.
It's one of those things because you moving fast is your superpower, right? Like
I think so.
To drive, that's one of the But you think like a hockey player or a basketball player. Like if you have like great speed, you can skate really fast.
Yeah,
awesome. But if you can't stop,
if you can't do any of the other things, of the skills,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I look at like Jaden Ivey for the Pistons, and I've saw before he broke his leg, he had always had the speed and he'd always go breakneck.
Yeah.
But it didn't always pay off. He'd always now he's learned really that art of like being able to speed up, slow down. And it's how do you guard that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I've been challenged to look at the business as a whole, going back to my brother's statement, but of looking at, how things I do affect the whole business. That statement was made. And 3 months later, I was promoted. And that was a promotion that was similar to the leadership team for me, where it was like, I kind of knew that that's what my dad wanted for me, but I was tentative.
Yeah.
Again, because I was doing this over here and I was doing it well. And now I had added in the leadership element, although I didn't have a title, like a director title, right? And I'm like, okay, well, what does that truly mean? Do I even need that? So I was a bit hesitant on that. I think, he probably would have maybe had me step up into that role a bit sooner than I did, but eventually I was like, okay, I'll do this. And it wasn't like it was a begrudging thing. Like I was like, okay, I'll do this, but I wasn't, I didn't feel ready for it at the time. And I wasn't quite sure what it was going to represent. I knew for one thing, it was going to take him out of it was going to remove certain responsibilities from him because he was kind of shouldering some of that, and I wanted that for him, but at the same time I didn't have a full picture on kind of what that was going to look like in some of the evaluation we've done in the last couple of years. We do the regular daily, nightly janitorial stuff. That's the bread and butter of our business. And that's the biggest driver for, new customers. But we've got other lines that we provide to customers should they want them, floor care, consumable products. We have a blind cleaning division that was basically a kind of like a subsidiary of Populist that owners acquired back in, of course, I'm not going to remember. Maybe it was like the early 2000s-ish, right? Uh-huh. The business had started in 92, and then they acquired it in like maybe the early 2000s. And it kind of ran alongside Populist. Was part of Populist, but wasn't really part of Populist. And it was, so there was this, there was this push to say, okay, well, it's been over here, but it's still a part of Populist. Like, why isn't it just officially part of Populist?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's make it a division of Populist. We did that.
That's cool for me. Always, like I was there for a long time before Aria was even brought up.
Yes. Yep.
And I was like, wait a minute, what is
this? Exactly. Yeah. So, it was to a point where it needed to either be its own thing entirely or, come in under Populist fully, run on EOS, and all that entails with the cadences of the meetings and the measurables and everything that comes with that. And then just the support that comes with being part of Populist rather than being this thing over here on the side, right?
Yeah.
So that happened just recently within the last year. And so that's what you would consider an added service that we have. It's window treatments and blind cleaning on site. Like they come to your home and or business and do everything right there in the van. It's like one of those Mercedes Sprinter vans. It's a big van, right? They've got this patented process that they do this. And that's kind of what sets them apart to their competitors is that everything is right there on site. You have to take your blinds down, take them home, or take them down, take them back to your brick and mortar, right? And do whatever you need to do to those. Service them, whether it's repairs or cleaning or whatever. They do it all right there. You get them back up the same day, right? So you're not living in a fishbowl for, a week or whatever it might take.
Yep.
They can also sell you new blinds, and they have, samples that they can bring to your home so you can see them in your home, in the lighting, up against the paint colors that you have on your wall, whatever it might be, right? So some things that make them unique. They're primarily residential, though. So it's like I don't know, maybe 80% residential customer, maybe even more. A bulk of what they've done commercially has been just organically through Populist when our customers have needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm involved in some of that and helping with that. And, because I'm like a driver or like an ideas person, I'm in the room for those type of conversations and trying to improve upon what they already have. Like customer life cycle, how are you generating new leads? Things, or how are you
really
staying in
the
front of
sales
your
process
yes,
together.
exactly. Because it's all just kind of been organic over the year because it's a few person operation.
Yeah.
So involved with that, moving these other lines of service that we offer in addition to the regular janitorial. That all is under the umbrella of the director. It was something that was not a responsibility of mine at all prior to that.
Yeah.
So going back to what I said, like you're doing stuff over here, some of this stuff over here is just not getting the same attention, right?
Yep.
So there's some of that.
How do you balance that?
I wish I balanced it better.
We all do, but yeah. Because
I'm
it is a
working
lot.
on it.
You have a big thing over here, but then
Yeah.
it's like some leading of people. You said you have a couple of people.
Yeah. So there's some marketing. One of them is Ruthann, who you met, who's a legacy employee.
Yep.
And as a legacy employee, she does a lot of things phenomenally well. But she's grown with the company, and so, for lack of a better way of explaining it, it's like these ties or these tentacles that kind of run through the company, where people are like, "Oh, Ruthann can do that. Oh, Ruthann can do that. Oh, Ruthann can do that." Right? But does that really fit what like that role should look like if it weren't Ruthann?
Yeah.
And Ruthann is, later in her career where she has other endeavors in her life that she would like to give more attention to, I think. And so in coming into this role, one of the things that I was kind of championed with was looking at how to offload things from her and eventually leading to like some sort of retirement, right? And naturally, being a legacy employee, she's like, I'll do what I need to do, right? For the company, right? I mean, she's got an investment that way, but to me, I'm like, well, I got to think about this outside of the parameters of Ruthann, because if it's not Ruthann, how should it look?
So true.
And that's a little tricky, messy in its own way, and it's not Ruthann's fault at all, right? It's just how the business has grown.
Oh yeah.
And she's grown with it, and the things that needed to be done that she did, right? And in many ways, she's a graphic designer. She knows ins and outs of, designing a website. She's a marketer in certain ways.
Yep.
She's a brand specialist in a lot of ways. And I just named like 4 roles right there. But are we going to hire for 4 roles? No. Because they'd all be part-time in some capacity. And I have my thoughts on, whether part-time or full-time is the better option. And I'm still trying to work through those. So going back to how are you managing that, or how do you manage that?
How do you duplicate
I'm working
it if
through it.
gone?
Yeah, I'm working through it. And I think what it's really boiling down to is I was just challenged the other day by my dad to, think about what you'd want your division to look like in a year or two, ideally, and then we'll bring you back to reality. But so it's, what lives where?
Yeah.
Right? There's also the social media element. And the LinkedIn and the Facebook and the Instagram and those things. How's this look without these specific people in play? What do you hire for? You want the right person. Do you have like a plan A as far as how this division could look versus a plan B depending on the person that you find and what they maybe excel at and what they don't excel at? Like I need help on the sales side a bit, like with the upfront sales process. Prospecting, emailing, cold calling. Because cold calling is not dead.
Yeah.
All that I need help on, right? And so there's definitely like a part-time role in that. Could it be a full-time role if there were other things added in because that person could accommodate or do well at some other things too? I don't know. Is the person that cold calls well going to do well at admin things, or, you have to kind of.
Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, that's me.
Yeah.
I just
know
don't
I'm
have
not
the time
the admin
for it.
person.
Yeah, no, me neither, man. I need like a CRM manager, things like that. So working through ideas basically, and it's still pretty new, and I remind myself that again in my impatience. I'm like ready to pull my hair out sometimes, where I'm like, oh, I can't do all these things well. I'm managing this. I'm not over here. But it's only been 3 or 4 months, and in business, that's really not that long.
No.
It feels like eternity though.
It's a fun challenge. I just love life in general, but especially like going from doing sales extremely well, to then going into leadership. And there is that huge gap.
Yeah.
You can move things in sales with your sheer force, right? Like you're a doer, you're going to hammer through, I want to come back and talk about cold calls in a little bit too, because I love that. All day we'll have conversations with people thinking that cold calling is dead. So I want to go back into that. But, you're moving that forward with your sheer force. In leadership, it's more stepping back and thinking with your mind
100%.
in how am I going to, it's the sales too, because you have to sell your people.
Absolutely. I mean, everything is sales.
Yeah.
Sales is everywhere.
Yep.
You're selling someone like Steve Mayo is in sales. He's an engagement cultivator.
Yep.
And a recruiter in many ways, but he's in sales in his own regard. He's selling folks on what Populist is and what Populist vision is for them and for their customers. You want to come be a part of that, right? Do you want to stay a part of that?
What I love about that is I think the most important thing to do in sales is you've got to sell yourself. Like you're the first biggest sale that you have. Steve is sold on Populist.
Absolutely.
The last time I saw him anyways, and I can only imagine that's,
Yep.
As he's flourished in this role that it's gotten bigger, but he's been 100% sold on Populist and the culture and everything it's about. So for him to go out there, he's not putting on a sales spiel. He's speaking from the heart.
Oh yeah. No, it's very natural to him at this stage. He just passed 10 years, by the way, at Populist.
Awesome.
It's just crazy that he started as literally a part-time cleaner, supplementing income to where he is today, and having worn like 8 hats along the way.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome to see. But yeah, cold calling is not dead.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, that's what Mayo does a little bit of that. I mean, it's just in different realms, right? You're selling, like I said, this vision, but like you said, he believes it. I mean, it doesn't sound put on or manufactured, right?
Yep.
I think that's why I had the success that I had, and still have, just not at the same rate that I would maybe love to see. But if you believe in it, it's not manufactured. You don't have to go out there and it's not scripted. It's I'm trying to bring this great team that we have to anyone who's a good fit to be served by them, right?
Yep.
And it's really just that simple. One of the coolest parts for me is like working in that customer onboard when they've said, yeah, let's do this thing. And then I'm bringing team players into the mix on, site visits, and here's this team and here's this team and here's your manager, your account manager that you're going to deal with. And here's your branch manager that's in support to them. And here's our process. And we're going to see you quarterly for partnership meetings. And I just love in those introductions and starting that. And then I'm more involved in that as an ongoing process now. I think that's kind of a piece that has been further developed since we sat down last, was what we call our quality partnership meetings. And what that looks like is it's a quarterly partnership meeting with the customer. And it's, kind of above the weeds of the day-to-day, and true to EOS form, we ask questions like what's working, what's not working, where are other realms that we can help you, how's your business going, how are things for you, just to stay in alignment, right? So many business relationships fall to pieces because you end up misaligned and you're missing each other, or
Yep.
things fester and brew and bubble and then they pop off, right? If you can stay in front of each other,
keeping the line of communications open.
100%. Yeah, I think we've seen great success in that. I think there's a lot of work even still to be done and things to improve upon, and it's all part of a process that my dad dreamed up, and is, bit by bit we're implementing that. We want to make sure we're doing well at this piece before we add the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. But I've talked to other folks in different worlds, maybe similar worlds, but different industries, right? And they're like, wow, the quarterly partnership thing, that's a great idea. So steal it if you want.
Steal it. And you guys have a proven process, right? So it's like building that into that proven process. This is what it looks like to work with us. It is not BS.
Yeah, and I sit in those meetings. And so I don't sit in all of them.
Yeah.
Because we do have a structure in operations where I can't be the first call all the time if there's something needed, right? But I'd still sit in them with a regular frequency because it gives me a holistic perspective on how the business is doing, how we're doing with customers, what's the feedback we're getting. Are we seeing traction based on that feedback, on solves or whatever, right? So this has been good. I think there's more to be done. But it's definitely made a difference. I think we've been running that strong for a few years now, and we're really starting to see the fruits of that, I believe.
Well, the huge piece, and one, the communication. Two, having it structured and asking those questions: what works, what doesn't work. The biggest key differentiator, though, is one, how many companies are actually doing those meetings. But even if you're doing those meetings, like what I think makes you all different is you actually care. Like at the end of the day, it's not just let's have a meeting to have a meeting.
It's not lip service.
It's not lip service. It's, and as we're talking, it's like having those meetings every week and adjusting not just what you're doing out externally, to that for your clients, what you're doing internally to constantly improve. It's constantly looking and having those tough conversations of like your brother saying to you, "I wish that you would think like this."
Yeah,
like those are tough conversations that you don't see in a lot of companies. In fact, I see it in a lot of companies. People are afraid to either afraid to offend people, so they don't tell them the whole truth. They sugarcoat it. They don't tell them, and then things fester and build up, and all of a sudden you hate this person, and you just didn't have a conversation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you can't be open and honest, then that's part of our proven process.
Yeah.
I probably had a LinkedIn post about this at some point, but you're doomed. I mean, like you said, it's going to fester. It's going to come to a head eventually, though, and it could come to a head and it crash and burn, right? Whether it's with you and a team member on your team, or whether it's with you and a customer.
Yep.
And we're looking at that, right? Like, okay, when we're in those meetings, is this customer being open and honest about our shortcomings? If we're having shortcomings, I mean, we're not perfect, right? This is such a human industry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Things get missed. People don't show up.
Yep.
Folks call off last second. Folks don't show up. Just never tell you and don't show up.
Yeah.
It's a tough, gritty, grindy industry that way. And so, tell us, where are the shortcomings? Because we're going to take those and go back to those and try and find solves for those, true to EOS, identify, discuss, and solve. And then what we're going to do is in 90 days, we're going to be back in front of you and we're going to go over what we talked about 90 days ago.
Yeah.
And we're going to say, how are we doing? Did it improve? Maybe we believe it improved. Did the customer believe it improved? Right? We want to make sure that that we're not misaligned. Like, oh, we think the building's clean, but the customer doesn't think the building's clean.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's all about alignment, shared expectations, right? Being at the same pageness,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being on the same page for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's different. Like you said, I don't think a lot of companies are doing that, but maybe they are in some way, but it's more than just the meeting. It's what do you do with the feedback from the meeting?
What do you do
right?
with it?
It's a follow through.
In fact, honestly, if you're having that meeting and then you don't do anything with it,
I think the customer would be even more frustrated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're gonna.
I'm seeing you. I'm making time for you every 90 days. We're talking about these things, and every 90 days we're back here talking about these things.
It'd like be being in sales and asking good questions, but then like asking a question that they just answered. You know, like they, you look like an ass.
I just said that.
I just said that.
Per my previous email.
But you're just filling the quota. You're going down and checking the boxes, and you know, again, like where you guys are different is you truly want to get it right, and let's hit on this of like you're not doing something glamorous. And when we talk about finding employees, you're talking about people that are going to clean facilities, bathrooms, like dirty places.
It's not easy work. It's physical work. It's unglamorous work. You know, we're not in tech. We're not developing the next app. And no discount to folks that do that. But in certain scenarios, this is just part-time work for some people that are just trying to get themselves either out of debt or get themselves a car or pay off, whatever it is that their last note is that they have to pay off, or, it could be a secondary income. So, mom's working all day or dad's working all day, and then the other one is out cleaning at night or whatever it might be, right? So it's gritty, but it's honest in that way, I think. But you see, a wide variety of people and different priorities and different values, and you have to account for the human piece of it, right? We're not machines here. You tell customers that, like, look, we're gonna make a mistake. We're gonna miss a trash can. There's gonna be a toilet paper dispenser that's out. Are we communicative? Are we proactive? Are you chasing us down? And how many walks I go on where they're like, I gotta new prospective customer walks, and they're like, I gotta chase down my account manager, or I gotta submit this complaint, and I have no idea where it goes, and I don't hear back about it for days. Or someone won't show up for a cleaning shift, and I won't know if it's being filled. I sat in a meeting this morning that gave us great praise. One of our customers in the Plymouth area is a manufacturing facility that gave us great praise for. We had a day porter this morning who got in a fender bender as a result of the ice.
Yeah.
Right? Someone slid into their rear end, rear-ended their car, and they were not able to make it into work, right? Had to wait for a tow, whatever it was. I don't know all the details of it because I'm not in operations that way, but sat in that meeting. He gives us great praise for the fact that our account manager, props to Richard, reaches out right away to the customer. Here's what happened. A support staff member's en route. They're going to be, won't be there at 8 or 9 or whenever they were supposed to be there. Be delayed by, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And they show up and they do a bang up job when they get there. Right. So, and I'm sitting in the meeting at 10 o'clock or whenever it was, and he's giving us praise over that communication. He goes, that was a huge deficiency in my previous vendor. So
it's huge because I don't think anybody at the end of the day wants you to be superhuman. We're dealing with humans, right? And so obviously somebody gets into a fender bender, wasn't expected. You're not going to have somebody there at their work time.
Right.
That would be crazy. But the communication that this is what's going on and they will be there. And then when they show up, they do the job. That's night and day difference.
I think even you could make the argument that even if it took us, obviously we want to be there as soon as possible with support, but even if it took us half the day, as long as we communicated it as soon as it happened and said, we will be there between the hours of 9 and noon or whatever, right? Now they know.
Yeah.
Knowing is everything that way, right? I mean, otherwise you're anxious, like, am I even getting someone today? Yeah. You might not. Yeah. As a facility manager, you've got a zillion things going on each and every day. You're getting pulled in every different direction, and you may not even realize that cleaner is missing until someone starts ringing your phone saying, this is, coming undone over here. We're out of this over here. The front lobby looks like garbage. Is our cleaner even here?
Yeah.
And now the facility manager's going, well, I don't know. Is our cleaner here? I've been out here on the floor with this machine that's been down or whatever it is, right?
Yep. And now they feel stupid, so they're really pissed.
And now they're on the horn with your account manager going, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And that's what he alluded to in our meeting was, the previous, I wouldn't find out until like halfway through the day. I'd have to call them. You never want that.
No. Where's our person? Oh, they got into an accident.
Proactivity. Always proactivity, not reactivity. But, call them and or they might not even show up the day.
Yeah. Man.
Just what a nightmare. I mean, they got enough stuff going on, right?
Yep.
Again, like you said, no one is expecting a superhuman. But a little bit of communication goes a long way.
And I've always loved how you distinguish. You don't call them customers or clients, or it's always that partner. We're going to work partner because you're really literally coming in and partnering and taking something off from their shoulders. They really don't want to worry about.
Right.
They're not there to clean the building.
No, cleaning's like insurance, man. It's like just something you got to have.
You got to have,
No offense to people who sell insurance, but it's like, it's one of those things where if it's done well, it goes pretty unnoticed. Outside of the people that have a strong day-to-day relationship with it, that deal with the things when it's not going well, right? If it's done poorly, everyone in the facility feels it, right?
Yeah.
But if done well, you fly under the radar of most folks at the facility outside of the people with the day-to-day relationship with the cleaning, and they truly appreciate when things are done well because now they're not bogged down by, deficiencies that relate to cleaning.
Yes.
They got other deficiencies they're dealing with related to their core business.
But they don't have to worry about the cleaning piece. It's, again,
the toilet paper being out, which, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there another roll up under there? Because there's a lot of times there's two rolls. Is there? There's at least two rolls. I don't know.
You touched a minute on like the human piece and, the human when we're thinking about our clients, but you think about the human and managing the people that are within our organization. We're talking about doing work that's like, not fun, exciting. It's mundane. It's cleaning. Sometimes it's thoughtless and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was meeting with a potential client the other day and she's in the home health industry and she's kind of newer in her business, but she's doing well to the point where she's booked out constantly, but she can't find people that take care of people the way that she does.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how hard it is to find and, going through this, like, my whole point is like, listen, she told me, she was like, I want to change the way that home care is done. I want to change the way that we look at our elderly people. I want people to look at elderly people as people, not as a condition, not as Alzheimer's, not as dementia, not as like we didn't take care of them, that we're actually going in and loving on these people and that we're changing the way that the home care is being done. Mm-hmm. And then she showed me her job description and she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, it's good. Yeah. Like, it looks like everybody else's, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah.
But you just told me you want to change the way that home care is done.
Yeah.
You want people to see people as people. Like, let's shake it up a little bit because, and I told her about you guys and it's like talking about like, like helping a man get to the moon. I remember like talking about that story of like, we're not there.
That's a great little
cleaning the room, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, what is that? That's one of the Kennedys.
Yeah.
In like the 60s, and it's at NASA, and the story goes, he goes up to the janitor, and he's like, well, I'm Jack Kennedy. Who are you? What do you do here? And the janitor introduces himself, and he goes, I help him putting a man on the moon. Just by mopping the floor. Right, done well. I mean, there's a certain pride that can be taken in the work that we do, and I think Stephen Mayo is the epitome of that. But I've made different LinkedIn posts on this as well. When we do our job well, we affect everybody in the facility. We directly affect their lives. From everything from like the employee that shows up that gets to use a clean restroom where there's not crap all over the, literally crap all over the toilet.
Literally, yeah.
Or, it's a seller for the business to attract new talent, right?
Yep.
Other folks that, like, if they need to hire, now then they come in, they look at the facility. If it's a dump, they're not going to want to work there. So it's that, it attracts new talent, helps you attract new talent. Customer tours, we do a lot of this. where our customers or our partners will say, hey, we've got high-level visit coming in from wherever it might be, you know, corporate, this, that, and the other. Sometimes it's like the governor's coming or things like that, right? We need some extra love here in these areas. This is the tour route or whatever it might be. Reflection on your business that way. So, you know, or like the manufacturers that we have, the tier ones that they deal with the big three. Oh, Ford is coming, you know, GM's coming, stuff like that. In healthcare facilities, like you literally have thousands of patients frequenting the facility on a daily basis. I don't know if you've ever been in a exam room that's in crummy shape from a cleaning perspective. I have. It doesn't leave you with tons of confidence on what you're about to receive service-wise.
Very nervous.
Yeah, man. If I've been in hospital rooms where you're looking around going, when's the last time they mopped the floor in here? And maybe it's just me because those are things I look for. But
yeah,
then you wonder if they can't mop the floor, what else?
Yeah, absolutely. You go into a restaurant and if the bathroom is messed up, like what is going on in the kitchen?
Business by their restrooms,
absolutely,
like all the time,
absolutely,
all the time. You want to go back to where you got to hover over the toilet seat when you use the bathroom. You want to go back to where you got to plug your nose every time you go in to use the bathroom. You know, those are things that everybody takes into consideration. So we're direct. You know, we're there's our team, but we're an extension of your team in many ways. So. I mean, that goes back to the partnership thing. You know?
How do you, with your internally, your people, employees, like how do you keep them engaged to feeling like they're kind of in that situation of putting the man on the moon or they look at their jobs maybe differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot that we do, and I can touch on some of that. I think there's always improvements to be made. But for us, we want the right fits for the team, and not everyone's the right fit. And some folks get hired that aren't the right fit and they don't last. Mm-hmm. I think you'd rather that than, you know, poisonous or toxic environments from employees that aren't the right 5,000% fit. You know what I mean? But yeah, so we've got several different processes from a cultural standpoint, and Ameo is involved in a lot of those. But it's also heavily on the operations side. With different check-ins from our managers to field staff. In our world, oftentimes frontline cleaners can feel like they're on an island, right? Or that they're just out there and they're the ones making the company money, but who's supporting them?
Yeah.
I haven't seen my manager since blah, right?
Yep.
Insert date. That happens. And when they're not supported, they're less inclined to do a good job. I mean, you Absolutely. Know, like why would I keep doing this? Nobody's looking out for me.
Yep.
I've needed rags for 2 weeks now and I've not got them, or whatever it is, right? Whatever the need might be. So, you know, there's check-ins, there's regular check-ins, there's different stuff from a cultural standpoint that Ameo is involved in through 90 days and then ongoing. You know, if we keep cleaners engaged up to 90 days, data shows that they stay longer.
Yeah.
But you can't just do 90 days and then, now I haven't seen anybody for 6 months now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. We do a quarterly company call, which I think we were doing that when we sat down last, and that's continued to build traction. It's actually coming up. It's on like the 20th, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I remember being on that one on the call, and I remember the post that you put out. But it was like because I remember sitting on that call and like working with you for a little bit, where it's like going through your cold call process and talking about cold calls not being dead. And you know, some of these people would go through your CRM and like this is a cold call, and then all of a sudden they're landing as clients. I remember being on that one call and the people coming on and talking about how grateful they were to work for the company, and to be grateful for being on this site. And as they were naming different sites that they were grateful for, and their sites that they're at, it's like. That was a cold call that started with Danny. And like to think about when you're in that sales and you're in that business development and going back to like your actions are changing the company, good or bad, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But you look at that good way that as you're closing clients, you're giving opportunity to people.
Yeah.
Like you're creating opportunities for people to join a company with a good culture that invests in you.
Yep. Yeah. It's a good amount of that still happens on the call. Those kind of testaments to their time at Populist.
Yeah.
We love to hear that. We take that to heart. The call starts, going back to the EOS format. Do we run EOS Pure? No, we don't run EOS Pure, but we stay as close to that as we can. And the first 15 minutes roughly of that call, it's an hour-long call.
Yep.
Folks are expected to be on it if they're at work, and so they're paid to be on it. At some of our large sites, they get a conference room and so you get all, some of our sites, we've got like 15, 20 plus cleaners on staff as they're at any given time,
so
right?
cool.
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's crazy.
I know, man.
I'm like, wow, really
Right?
big. Oh,
No,
that's
I
crazy.
know. It's nuts. It's just saying that, man. I honestly remember walking.
I was like, holy
sites
crap,
going,
that's some growth.
wow,
Like,
if we ever get this site, this is just so next level. Well, we're on that next level. At this point, we're on that next level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've started to grow accustomed to that. And it's good because I like playing ball on the next level. So,
Yep.
and like you said, it affords even more people the opportunity to be a part of this team and do what we do and what we believe in, right? And what we believe in bringing to team members and partners and customers. So, first 15 minutes of that call is a lot of highs and lows across the last 90 days because we do it every 90 days, similar to how we meet with our customers at a QPM every 90 days. And you'll get, some of that tends to break out into I just met this milestone at Populist, and I'm just so grateful to be here down at this site in Toledo. And then another person, I just met this, I'm 2 years at Populist or 5 years at Populist just this past quarter, and I'm up here in Brighton, right? Or, it's neat that way.
Yeah.
And then there's usually a bit about, there's what we call a president's corner. So my dad talks for a hot second on something. There's a director of ops bit where Steve talks about something, and usually that has to do with like tips or different trainings and ongoing education
Yep.
for team members. A Mayo will talk about different opportunities that we are offering team members, things like financial education. So we're partnered up with like Squire, which is a financial education program where, everything from like paying off debt to how to improve your credit score to how to apply for a loan, how to buy a house, like all different things, like managing a budget, how to create a budget, stuff that you should have been taught in school that sometimes doesn't make it into school.
Yep.
Instead, we're doing whatever we're doing.
It's pretty crazy that some of these just life skills that you get
Like
out and you're
how
like,
to do a budget.
yeah.
Come on now.
None of it.
How can we do that? Can we not do that in high school? I don't know. I've been out for over 10 years, but maybe
It's not being done. You can take so many different programs, but there's no like just here's how to manage
stuff,
your credit.
man.
Here's none of that stuff.
Don't fall for this trap with this credit card, whatever it is. So anyway, it's a platform that we offer, and there's incentives to do some of that. Completing different courses, different rewards stipulated with that. So yeah, I will actually have a little bit in the next call about growing our social media presence because now that's on my plate. So it's like, hey, by the way, you can go follow us on LinkedIn, and you can follow us on Instagram, and you can like us and follow us on Facebook. And hey, team, if you're doing that already, here's a great free way to spread Populist to everybody. Go on, click that page, click invite all friends.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
People will decline it if they don't want to. A lot of people will accept it. You never know where that will go.
Yep.
My wife's grandmother reposts all my stuff, and you just never know if that is gonna
Who that's
gonna make it down the line to that may end up working for us someday, or may end up partnering with us and need cleaning services or whatever it is, right, man?
Yeah.
So, you can do that stuff, and so I want to speak on that a little bit this next call, but this it's incremental, the things we do to keep folks engaged and continue to feel supported. We do a couple surveys per year with, I think it's like 4 simple questions that kind of gauge where is everyone. With those 4, based on the results, the answers, and then there's usually like a little comment box at the bottom. We take that, we review that as a leadership team. How do we do? What can we take and improve upon? And you're looking for 80%, right? Because going back to EOS, 80% is, you're never going to be 100%, right?
Yeah.
It's just like if you hire someone under you to do something, if you wanted you to do it, you would always do it.
Yep.
You have to be okay with someone doing 80% of what you would have done.
Yep.
So we want to be 80% or better on, these 4 questions that we're asking. So yeah, it's multifaceted, but it's ongoing, man.
I just think it's huge. And again, when your dad was on this show, I remember there's one thing that stood out, and we talked about. There's a lot of stuff, but there's one thing that he talked about when you're taking care of people and having people in your company, and the amount of lives that each person in your organization touches. When you think about, they go home and they have their family, and it's like, so if you can improve somebody's day or their life by being part of your company, like how many people does that reach and touch?
I think
That's
it's
pretty
neat.
impactful.
I think it's neat, man. I think now more than ever, I think I'm even more aware as we continue to grow because, having grown up in the business, I've known it from everything from the mom and pop that it once was to the 230 employees that now exist. 3 branches, 2 of which I was heavily involved in growing. The one I helped start. And so now you're literally seeing more referrals. Like, oh, my friend works here or my family member works here and things like that, right? So, and they say great things, and I want to be part of it, whatever it is. And again, it's not for everybody. The industry's not for everybody. Populist is not for everybody. But it's cool to watch that team grow that way and hear those testaments that, okay, what we're doing here, it appears to be working. And if we stay at it diligently, it'll keep working, hopefully, and improve, right?
Yeah.
So
it's huge. And I just wanted to talk about it because I know that's always Populist's goal is taking care of your people. And, it's a people business. Whether you're taking care of your
it's at the root of the name, man.
External.
Populist. The Latin is from the people, of the people. I took Latin in like 7th grade. Don't tell my teacher.
I think you're ahead of the curve, though. I don't know who took Latin last. So,
it all comes back to like core values.
Ruth and your Latin teacher,
or my mother, maybe. It could have even been my mom. I was homeschooled for 4 years. So it all comes back to like core values, shared vision, all that stuff, right? And I think as a company grows, you have to look at that stuff too. Like, are we still what we say we are, or does this accurately represent what we are now, or are we looking to improve upon that even, right? Like core values, things like that. Like, no, it's not written in stone anywhere that your core values can't change the way that they're, written or the way they read to people, what that means, right? So we've thought about, elaborating on some of that and different stuff like that as we continue to grow because we're different than we were 10 years ago. That's growth.
It's growth. It's growth. I want to go back into cold calling.
Yes.
It's funny. I met with somebody just before this, our new client, and I told him, let's schedule a time to go out, and I'll go out with you. Prospecting.
Yes.
He does like DOT drug testing. That's his company. It's called Fastest Labs is his company.
Okay.
And so his target clients are the manufacturers and the
And
so I was like, hey, let's schedule a time. I'd love to go out with you. I want to see what you're saying. I want to help out. Let's have some fun, like what we did, right?
Love it.
And so he's like, this is funny. As I'm about to come and meet you, he was like, yeah, there's this new area I want to prospect. And he was like, it's going down Grand River, out to New Hudson, Wixom, like all this area.
And you're like, wait a minute, I've done.
Like, that's awesome. We'll hit those same places.
Yeah.
It was so
it's like,
funny.
wait a minute, I got a map already.
I was like, that's so funny because I'm off to sit with Danny right now, and that was the area that we hit. So
awesome, man. No, it's funny, man, because I literally saw it on LinkedIn this morning. Oh, what is it? I'm not going to remember the name of the account because actually I didn't follow them until this morning. I don't know. It came across my feed and something about it's like a tombstone. And it's like, here lies something like all the accusations that cold calling is dead. Because, right, there are so many people out there that are like, cold calling is dead, and here's all the reasons why. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's never been my experience, ever. Like, from 8 years old, knocking on doors to mow lawns on, to personal training, to what I'm doing now, B2B sales, it's never been the case. And so I commented on that. I commented on that post. It was funny because literally yesterday, I walked into a medical facility after I had lunch with somebody, and I see this 3-story medical facility. All right, let's walk in there.
Yeah, I love it.
And go in, and the first floor is like a lobby. Nobody's at a desk. And I'm looking at the screen that, shows what's on each floor. And I go, where can I bug somebody? So I go up to the third floor because I saw business office. I was like, okay, well, maybe but the third floor, right? Get up there, but then I can't find a business office upstairs. But there is a gal at the desk. And I go, hey, I'm just curious who I'd talk to about, cleaning services for this facility. She goes, I think you need to go to the second floor and talk to the clinic coordinator. She gave me his name. She goes, but we already have a cleaning service. I'm pretty sure. I was like,
so most
that's great. I was like, that's great. Most do. I'd love to be the backup. Next call, should they not play out how you'd like them to. So anyway, go down second floor, walk up. Now, look, a lot of stuff's got to go right this way, and you got to be ready to face the rejection, and you got to be nimble enough to ask a good question to open a door, right? I think this is where I struggle to hire somebody or onboard somebody that is going to be able to do this, right? Whether it's on the phone or whether it's in person.
Yep.
And this goes back to, you got to be okay with them doing 80% of what you would have done. Right. But anyway, put that aside for now. I go up, I say, hey, this gal at the desk, I'm looking for so-and-so, the name that was given me. I said, I was just on the third floor. I was told to come down and talk to him. Okay. Who are you? And who are you with? And I say, and she goes back, gets him. He comes out. I introduced myself, said, hey, I went up to the third floor. They told me to come talk to you. Do you make the decisions about cleaning at this facility? And he goes, I do, but, we've got a company. We're very happy with them right now. I said, that's great. I'm glad it's working for you. Can I leave some information? And do you have a card? I'd like to stay in touch, provided it doesn't work out. I could be your next call. We could be your next call. And he goes, yeah, let me go get my card. Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
It's not always that easy.
Yeah.
But actually, the more you do it, I think the easier it gets. And if you do it often enough, like with regularity,
yep,
it tends to stay easy enough. Are you going to get every decision maker every time? Absolutely not. But like I've noticed in the whirlwind of my work world, if I don't cold call for a handful of weeks, maybe even a month, you feel that rust when you go to do it again. You're trying to knock that rust off.
Yep.
Even if you've been doing it for years, which I've been doing it for years now.
Yep.
It's crazy I can say that, but you feel that rust, right? So I walk in and I get what I needed in that scenario, and I feel like I left a positive impact in that interaction, because that's what you want. Like, as when you're cold calling, you are interrupting somebody's day. All the things they say people hate, right?
Yep.
And the reason it's dead, you are interrupting somebody's day. You are asking for time, inserting yourself into somebody's day. And you are trying to put your best foot forward while gleaning certain information that can allow you to stay in touch with them, because 97% of the folks you call on are not interested at that time. But business doesn't get done if you don't cold call. I mean, that's what makes it happen, right? Yeah. So if you don't ask, how do I be on the list for the next time you need a quote? How do I be your next call if said vendor doesn't play out? You'll never know. It's what did Wayne Gretzky say? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
So yeah, take the shot, ask the question, pick up the phone, walk into the building, right? Because cold calling is not dead. It's not anywhere close to dead. And even post-COVID, I think it's even better now than it was when you and I walked into buildings, because that was in like 21 and 22.
Yeah.
And now even
There's
more
more
places
people
are
walking
open. There are employers that are mandating folks come back to offices.
Yeah.
Medical facilities are still open and running all the time. So like you can walk
You're
into,
good
you
there
know what I
anyway.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
I remember there was a few places we walked into and there's
get
like
past
no
the
front desk
vestibule?
person.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
We're like, is there anybody even working here?
I love the ones where it's like you got a double door here, you got another double door to get through.
Yeah.
And you can't even make it through the second double door. You're stuck in the vestibule and there's maybe a phone you can pick up, maybe not.
Maybe not.
There's nowhere to even leave a brochure. You're like looking around like, but probably if I slide it under there, then the cleaner's going to come by and throw it away.
Yeah.
So it's not going to work, right? But if you are passionate about what you're doing and getting your company out there in front of potential clients, and they can take it or leave it. That's the thing. Like, I mean, you're not forcing yourself on anybody.
Yeah.
You're simply, hi, here's who I am. I'm sure you have somebody in place. I hope it works out. If it doesn't in the long run, I'd love to be your call. I'd love to talk about whether we'd be a good fit. Maybe we're not even a good fit, right?
Yeah.
Cross that bridge when you get
And
there.
that's the thing, even in sales, is like, I just want to find out if we're a good fit. Let's cross this off the list so I don't keep calling you.
100%. And I think I've only improved year over year in trying to identify that earlier, the better.
Yeah.
Because nothing's worse than, you, like I just remember going through this in like my first year roughly. I think you helped me with some of the thought process on this, but again, if you don't do it consistent enough and you let those lulls happen in your activity that way, you forget things, right? And you forget key elements and questions to ask and ways to open doors and information to glean that helps you not be a pest in the long run. Because if you don't find out when they look at their contract, when their contract is up, you're going to hit them up every quarter and they're probably going to get sick and tired of it.
Yep.
And I've done that. I'm sure I've done that.
Yeah.
In my novice, in the first year, where I was so excited and completely mortified that someone answered the phone.
Isn't it funny how it's a dual feeling for sure? Yeah, like I'm excited. Shit!
Like, wait, now I got to talk. And you're like,
I've waited all day for this moment.
Are you the person? Yes, you're the person. Okay, great, bye. And then you're like, shit, when do I call them again?
Yeah.
Because if you don't call them, odds are they may not remember you. I mean, you've got there's a lesser chance that they remember you. I'm not saying that if someone
it's possible,
right?
most likely.
I'm not saying not to take someone at their word, but it's your job to be there when they need you.
Yeah.
Okay. So like if someone says, we'll include you on the next quote. Okay. But that has happened to me before. And then you're like, great. All right. I'm chilling till they hit me up. And then they never hit you up. And then then you call on them 2 years later and they're like, oh yeah, we just started with a new company.
Yep.
And you're like,
But you said
I was going to be included.
Like, yeah, that guy doesn't work here anymore.
Exactly. Especially in today's market where everybody moves around like every 18 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's smoothing out a bit, but like post-COVID, everybody was bouncing around like every year to 18 months.
Yep.
Which is another crazy thing as it relates to sales. I heard this in a book I was listening to. I heard this on a podcast. I was referencing a book. So I listened to the Jeb Blount podcast, which has now been actually, I think, mostly taken over by his son. And I don't listen to it as much as I did in my first year or two selling, but I still turn it on from time to time. And there's a gal talking about a book that she had put out, and she was talking about how everybody is jumping around a lot of times it's salespeople that are jumping around
Yeah.
every 18 months to 2 years. And you know this, that's probably the hardest 2 years of your sales career.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right?
Building up your book for that 2 years.
Planting all them seeds.
Yeah.
And then you just leave and someone else is either going to harvest them or they're just not going to get watered and they're never going to grow. Right?
Yeah.
So you do 18 months. You either do 18 months of the hardest work in sales and then you leave. Or I guess maybe you do 18 months of nothing and then you leave, which I think that happens too.
A lot. Yeah.
Because folks will just, mediocre salespeople will just bounce around. Not all salespeople are mediocre salespeople, but there are some salespeople that are mediocre salespeople.
I think it's probably like 70% are mediocre.
Yeah, I think
and that might be generous.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, you said it.
There was a stat, and this was like back in 2008, a book I read in 2008, that 60% of salespeople should get a new job.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it because, it's not an easy job.
No, it's not.
It's not an easy thing. I have conversations with my wife, and it's actually been recently here. I'm like, so this is how my day went. I called this person, talked to this stranger, like struck up a conversation out of nothing, tried to find common ground with some person who doesn't know me.
Yeah.
Found out that they've since left the company. Then they directed me somewhere else to try and find the new decision maker. So then I got off the phone, called that person, tried to talk to them. They don't know who I am. And I did that for about an hour. And then I landed back at the right person finally. So I spent a whole hour, but I finally got back to where I needed to be.
Yep.
She's like, I could never. I hate it. I would hate it. Or like, in recent, I think more of my focus in the last year, roughly, maybe more, has been to take more meetings. Coffee meetups, lunches, things like that.
Yep.
One-on-one interactions with people, network, basically, right? And some of this comes by way of the book that you recommended to me back when we were working together, The Go-Giver.
Yeah.
Right?
Phenomenal book.
And then The Go-Giver Sells More, or whatever the next one about sales was. Those were both great. And so taking more of those meetings, thinking outside the box as far as, who can be in my circle, whose circle can I be in that we may be able to indirectly help each other, right? Like you can't think transactionally, like, can I get leads from this person? It's not about that, right? So whether it's a neighboring industry that I'm meeting with, like someone who's in like restoration, someone who's in roofing, things like that, there's merit to those meetings. There's merit to meetings with other biz dev people that are outside of neighboring industries because you never know when they might be looking for a change.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy where I'm at, but I have been approached
I'm sure.
a handful of times
Yeah.
in meetings where I'm asked, "Are you happy?" And I'm like, I'm flattered, but if you know the history of my company, the odds I leave are slim.
Very slim.
Short of, an all-out knockdown, drag-out brawl at a family level, which happens, man, which is probably half the reason that I get hit up on occasion because family businesses implode all the time, I guess. If you don't know when to wear a family hat and a business hat. Dave Ramsey can talk about that. But, yeah, it's the networking element I've really been trying to focus more on. Those seeds take a long time to see, come to fruition as well. And they may never. But I think that there's a nugget to be had in every conversation that you have with someone. And if you go in there with that mindset,
Absolutely.
It takes multiple times. You can't meet somebody one time for a coffee and expect something good to come from that in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
You have to go see them again in 3 months or 6 months and ask what's going on in their world or think
It's
about
a relationship
them,
business.
It is. It's like dating.
It is. Whether you're talking about your clients or you're
Right.
talking about collaboration,
Yeah, it's like
connections.
dating.
It's dating. Mm-hmm. It's relationships. It's just flat out.
Yeah.
And so I use dating as an analogy from sales all the time, because you think about like like if you're out on a date and you're just like giving all your features and benefits.
Oh yeah.
You
You're
know?
like, come on, where's the check?
I know, where's the check? You're like someone who's
Or you're
using
like,
stuff
can I
in
have
the
another
bathroom.
drink?
Versus like, I just want to get to know you. Are we a fit? Like, I don't even know you, you know, like let's figure out, are we having fun?
Yeah. Part of it, and this is where like back to the theme we started on in slowing down.
Yeah.
That has helped me, right, in those interactions as well. So like, I love to talk. You love to talk. Like we could talk all day long.
Yeah.
I will talk over somebody if I'm not careful though.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I'm so passionate about, and you're passionate about what you do.
Yep.
We'll just get to going, but we got to slow down and say, and ask questions. You have to come back to like, okay, why did I meet with this person? It wasn't just for me to sit here and tell them how great Populist is, or, you know, talk about my kids all day long or whatever. Like, or even you might grab onto something they said and run on a tangent, and then you don't come back to them. Like, you have to be cognizant and say, wait a minute, like I want to know even more about you. I don't want to get hung up on this one thing, right?
Yep.
And that's what part of that comes with, you know, having multiple times meeting that person, like sitting down and doing things, right? Whether it's lunches or coffees or whatever it is. You know, you got to do that several times, and I've seen that. I've grown some relationships like that have really they've turned into friendships in the last year and a half with a few people that I just reached out. Like one of them, my gal Sherry, I just reached out to her on LinkedIn, like cold as hell. Hey, we're in neighboring industries. You want to meet for a coffee? Like I'd love to learn more about what you do and what your business does. And met up at like, I don't know, it was like 7 a.m. I'm not a morning person.
That's an early morning. Holy
I'll tell you what, man, I'm even less of a morning person now in having 2 kids under 3 years old who neither of which sleep with any consistency.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we met up at like 7 o'clock because she had another meeting right after that. And it was a short interaction, man, because again, she had a hard stop. It was like a 1 hour meet. That was it. It may have even been less than an hour because she had to hit the road and get to where she had to be next. And I didn't want to make her late. But met her several times after that. Since then, we're involved in similar networking groups. We're both in BOMA, Toledo, Building Owners and Managers Association in Toledo. I've been her guest to multiple things. She's been my guest to a few things.
So
we're always thinking about each other that way, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That relationship is like a year old.
That's so cool.
And it all started because I just opted to, cruising through my LinkedIn and said, oh, here's somebody.
Here's somebody. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And another gal I met, it was in a networking group, actually, that turned out not to be the greatest group. It just wasn't being ran all that well, I don't think. And I don't know if that was like the actual chapter administrator or if he just didn't have the support that he needed to run it.
Yeah.
It kind of turned into like for lack of a better way of putting it, like a BNI, which doesn't really work for what I'm doing, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was in that for about 6 or 8 months, but I met her and Angie. And so this was maybe 2 years ago I've known Angie for. And we've literally cold called together.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she goes
That's
in as like we go in there, and it's funny. Cleaning, like I said, cleaning touches everybody.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost easier to find a decision maker at a facility as it relates to cleaning as it might not like other industries. Like if you're doing like fire inspection, sprinkler testing, things like that. Not everybody knows that because they don't feel pain associated with that.
Yep.
People feel pain associated to cleaning, right? So if you walk into a place and someone's like, oh yeah, here's who you need to talk to, right? Because they're upset with how things are going. So yeah, we've cold called together. We've gone to multiple things together. And it takes a lot of social energy to do that stuff, to reach out, put yourself out there. Like you're somewhat vulnerable in that sense. I'm the guy who walks away from every social interaction going, how'd I do? Did I say something stupid? And it's not like I'm sitting there like trying to do like some sort of act, but when you talk as much as I do, you're like, did I say something dumb? Did I put my foot in my mouth somewhere? Did I, how did that come off? Was that not received the way I meant it? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I drive thinking,
going back to that driven person, like, like in your head. But yeah.
I know, like some folks will like record interviews that they have and they'll be like, how did I sound?
Yeah.
Which is really not, I mean, if you're interviewing, I don't think
good.
that's a bad practice at all.
It's really not.
You know, it's how am I doing? It's that reflection, that inward reflection. So
I use an app, outer.ai.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like any of my meetings, I just record them.
Record them? Okay.
So here's my hack, right? And so what's really cool is I'm sitting down, I'm recording this stuff, and then it gives you a summary, it gives you like your action items and all that kind of stuff. But now, like I think kind of in that way of like marketing and storytelling and that kind of thing. So if I sit down with a client and we've recorded this whole session, I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll pull like, give me a sales and marketing story. Like who's this people's target client? Like I'll boil it down and we'll like create a whole marketing plan off of just a conversation.
Dude, I have to get at you offline about that because it's actually something that's been on my radar. For what you just mentioned, but also for going back to cold calling.
Yo, yeah.
Think about that. Like, so me selling in 3 branches and still being a bulk of the sales movement, right? The person moving that for new customers. I'm on the road a lot, right? And so I'm like, okay, if I felt better about, like, if I had something to record my call.
Yeah.
On the chance I get the right person on the phone and it's an opportunity to have a conversation at that moment, because it's not like seldom is it the right opportunity.
Yep.
Usually it's like a 5-minute conversation or less where you're just, okay, I'll follow up, you know, at this point, or I'll send you an email and I'll follow up or whatever it might be. But if they have a minute to talk and they're actually willing to talk or want to talk, now you're like, you're on 696 and you're going, I can't take notes. There's no way I'm going to remember everything we talk about.
Yep.
So being able to record that.
Oh, it's huge.
Huge. And then I could literally put together a call block where I'm going to, okay, as I'm driving, I'm going to call these 5 people.
Oh, man.
I'm going to record it while I do it, and it make even more use of your driving time because as useful as it gets for me is listening to books. And that's good. Or podcasts. And that's good.
Yep.
But, you know, when I'm struggling with the upfront sales piece and I need some help, well, it would definitely help if I could do that on the road.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Like I said, even then, if you're having a great conversation and there's some like to-do items on both ends, or you can send that out to them. Hey, I got a summary. I'll shoot it out to you, because every single time it adds a value.
Absolutely, man. I got to get at you offline about that.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge, I mean, AI is a little scary.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it's pretty useful. If you're using it the right ways, it's pretty useful.
Yeah.
I think, to your point about a story, you know, helping put together that, I think I use it in some scenarios like that too. Like, I'm a pretty good writer, have been since, I don't know, high school. I was the kid who was like, thought I was going to write a novel one day, right? I was the kid that excelled in English and history and hated math and science.
I'm right with you. Yeah, yep.
So I have written a lot in my life. I was also the kid, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but how I got through high school was, hey, give me your paper. I'll improve upon that. And here you go.
Now it's yours.
And then the classmate is coming back to me going, I got a B. How'd you get a B+? It's my freaking paper, dude. And I'm like,
just
should have wrote it better, man. I don't know, whatever. I didn't like, you know, it's funny though. Like, I'm so opinionated in certain ways. Like some of the books we read in high school, I just didn't care for. So I was like, I'm not going to read it. And then I'll just write, I'll you know, I'll do that and write about it. Which is just like, man, in some ways, I mean, this is a whole other topic, but education is just so broken in certain ways that way, to where like that's where you land. You're like, okay, I'm going to learn how to work the system.
Yes.
I'm not going to learn about these things because frankly, I'm uninterested or whatever it might be. Like, why am I learning about this and not about budgets or whatever it is, right? And high school taught me how to get around this, you know, the system.
And you're perfect for sales.
Right. So
I'm like, there's a point there.
Right.
You know, like I've never looked at it like that. I'm always harping on the education system too.
Yeah.
However, if it teaches you to go way around the system, it's actually teaching you some life skills.
It's true. I mean, I think there's a lot of wasted time there.
I've spent my life testing fences, you know, like.
I love it. But anyway, back to the AI, man. I think it's still important to check it as far as like if you're using it, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I'll use it occasionally. I get writer's block or something, you know, because I like to post on LinkedIn and tell my story. But you know, you get going in other realms of your life and you just get burnt and you're like, oh, I don't even know what to write about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I'm sure that like legit authors who are much better at writing than I am, they experience that. So it's helpful that way. You know, you plug something in or maybe even take something you wrote in the past that you don't love and you say, how do you know, prompt it and how do I improve upon this or, you know, make it, you know, it's pretty incredible when you give it certain prompts. It really, and then you can teach it and all the things that it starts to pick up on. But if you're not careful, you can lose your own voice in that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's my point.
Yep.
That's what I'm getting at is
Yep.
like you still have to make sure your voice is there.
And that's huge. And so like how I'm programming it and utilizing like ChatGPT
Yes.
for example. So like
Yeah.
take this podcast, for
Yeah.
example.
Yep.
This has been my biggest pet peeve with the podcast. I created this thing to help people create content, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, you're awesome. We're having an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
We're getting deep. Like this stuff, if I make clips of it, people
Sure.
are going to watch it, right?
Yeah.
So, and people come on because they want exposure, right? So, so I cut the clips that week long of the podcast. I'll put clips out there and, you know, so people listen to the podcast. A lot of people watch the clips when I put them out there.
Yep.
And then that week goes by and I move on to the next episode and the people that are on the show don't do anything with that content. You were on for an hour and a half.
Right.
It's going to be like 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
So like, so you're on for that amount of time.
Yeah.
How many 30 to 90 second clips are in there, right?
Oh, yeah. So much
there's
gold
one.
in there.
There's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, Christine, we created a content vault
Yes.
for her and like now she has her content she can post for the next however long, right?
Yeah.
There's like 30 clips in there, like
Yeah.
video clips.
Yep.
Then taking the video clips and taking the transcript or taking the transcript from this whole entire conversation and be like, analyze, tell me what Danny's voice is.
Right. Yeah.
What is the sales and marketing story? What is it? And I'm like programming it and I'm
Yeah.
feeding it transcripts and then I can
Yeah.
create content for you that's outside of the videos, but I'm
Yeah.
creating content for you in your voice.
Yeah.
So like Christine, like
Yeah.
outside of the video clips, I created a ton of posts for her. So she's not guessing, what am I going to post
Yeah.
to the video? She
Yeah.
just bloop,
Yeah.
copy, paste, upload
Yeah.
the video. So it just
Yeah.
takes that off from her plate. But it's her voice. It's her experiences. It's not
Yes,
ChatGPT.
it's so
it's not
important.
the internet. It's her.
Yeah. Because it can feel a bit manufactured if you're not careful, I think.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
If you're not curating it how it should be.
Yes.
You have to prompt it the right way. I mean, I'll pop things into ChatGPT and I'll challenge it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I
Yeah, I
like,
do
you
too.
know,
Yeah.
this is funny, but there's a commercial going around out there about someone who's writing an email and then they rewrite it with AI and they send it to their boss.
Yes, yeah.
You know what
yeah.
I'm talking
Oh, yeah.
about? It's like,
and they're
he's
like,
playing
that
during
guy
football
said
games.
this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then this music plays and it's, you know, whatever it is. I have used it on occasion for like a follow-up email or something where I feel like, you know, I've reached out to this person a couple times and they're looking at it, they're not open, or, you know, maybe it's a LinkedIn message, right? And you can tell they've looked at it, they've done nothing with it. And I don't take that personal at this stage because early on I did take it personal. Like it's like when you text somebody and they leave you unread and you get butthurt about that. But it's in the business world now. I've done that to people on accident. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't take that personal anymore.
Yeah.
But at this point you're like, but at this point you're like, okay, I need to follow up and I'm not quite sure how to phrase it. Maybe it can be better than how I wrote it. Right. So you pop it in there. And so ChatGPT come back to me and be like, I'd love to blah, 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 blah. And I challenge it. I go, they don't care what I'd love.
I love it.
And they're like,
that's one of my biggest pet peeves, the eyes. Yeah.
I'd love to something. And if and maybe this was somewhere in my early, and I don't have any official sales training, by the way. But somewhere early on, I heard this was like, they don't give a damn about what you'd love. And actually, the more you use the less they care.
Yep.
And so
if you hadn't heard it before we worked together, you heard it from me.
Yeah.
Because like that's when somebody sends me
they don't
content.
care what you love.
Yeah. When somebody sends me an email or whatever, that's the first thing I look for. Is how many times did you begin the sentence with I? We got to reshape this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I do remember hearing that from you. And then I do remember hearing about like when you talk about what you'd love or what you want or this, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so I challenge it. And I've been doing this a couple times recently. I'm like, they don't care what I love. And it comes back, great point.
Great point. I love it. I love it when it's like, yeah, sorry
and I'm
about
like, and it reshapes it, and it, it's better. You gotta massage it. Put it that way. You gotta massage it.
I love this because we're talking about like sales and human interactions, asking people questions help you get better than just telling somebody something. And I think I do the same thing with ChatGPT. Instead of saying, no, I want this, I will ask it, like, it'll give me a YouTube short copy, right? And I'll be like, does this adhere to the 100-character limit of YouTube short?
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm so sorry, sir. No, it does not. Let me give you.
I know. I asked that. The question prompt is good. You know, when I asked it one time, I was like, because like social media is a piece, and I actually have someone that's managing social media for Populist and Aria.
Yeah.
But I do the best job I can managing my own. But I asked ChatGPT at one point, I was like, why different emojis or different bullets, right? Because it had this, it spit out this thing to me as like multiple emojis and bullets along the way. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And I don't know if I'd like, like the OCD in me wants everything the same.
Yeah.
Right? I want it to look uniform.
Yep.
So I said, change this to be more uniform. And then I saw that and I was like, I don't know about that either. And so I asked it, I'm like, why the multiple, bullets or emojis or whatever it would have been? And they were like, well, this can actually help with engagement, like changing up the visual. And
Yep. It makes it pop.
yeah, I'm like, that's interesting. There's something to be learned there. And you take those things, and I think, provided you're actually digesting that stuff, thinking about that stuff, and you're not just on autopilot letting ChatGPT write everything and anything for you that's going out there on social.
Yeah.
It can be good, because I think you can start to just sound like the ChatGPT guy if you're not careful. I think people know that now, Jason. I think they can identify that.
Yeah.
Because it's so well known that it's out there and it's being used.
Yep.
I mean, they're like students are being caught using it for papers, and I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
All the good, bad, ugly, it's all out there. If you're not careful, I see profiles where I'm like, ChatGPT wrote that. And it doesn't even sound like you, man.
I use an AI software to edit clips, right? It's called Opus. Like pull and edit clips. And it's awesome because it gives you a start. Sometimes it'll really nail and it'll rate them by, like, it'll give you a rating from like 60 something to 99. So like it'll rate the top clips, 99 being the best. I haven't seen 100 yet. I don't know if it exists. But so anyways, there's been some clips that have been the 99s that have hit really well and blah, blah, blah. But I've learned that like AI doesn't have everything figured out. No. I had a client that I was creating content for several, and there was a clip that was like the lowest rated clip out of the whole entire thing. Mm-hmm. I listened to it and I'm like, this is going to hit. Yeah. I edited it a little bit, put the clip out there, and for the client, it hit over 700,000 views. Yeah. Like it was played over 700,000 times. Yep. So like AI is great and it'll help out a lot. It'll make your job easier, but you got to check it. You do. You got to check it.
You do. And it has to represent you well.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're going to use it, just like anything. Yep. I mean, if it's gonna help you promote your business, it has to represent your business. The same way all your team members have to represent your business. You have to think about it the same way. Yeah. The same way if I was to, and this is one of the reasons I'm hesitant to contract out, like, you can contract out like cold calling and things like that, right? I'm hesitant on that front because it's like, you're the first touch in a cold call. You're the very first touch interaction, memorable moment that someone might have with your business. And if that's just someone who's contracted to do that for 6 other companies, are they as invested? I was literally just having coffee yesterday with someone talking about this, who she's done a variety of different things where she's currently sitting at a company that does some things as it relates to staffing, which I actually didn't even know when I sat down to have coffee with her. It's funny how these things just come up. Yeah. And so I'm talking to her, and she's like, yeah, I mean, is that contracted entity person, are they really as invested in Populist the way even a part-time employee through Populist might be, you know?
Yeah.
So it's something to think about, you know, like all these avenues or these resources, they could be the first interaction someone has with you and or your business.
Absolutely.
And they
Does
need
it
to
match
represent you
Does
well.
it align
Yeah,
with you?
absolutely.
Do you want them to represent you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or do you just look like the Chat GPT guy?
And speaking of that, you know, and going back and talking about the content, like you're one of my favorites, not my favorite person to go in LinkedIn. If I'm on LinkedIn, I'm
All
like,
props
where's
to you
Danny
for that,
stuff?
man. All shout out to you for that, because I was just like, I was kind of floating out there on LinkedIn before I met you.
But man, you said you were always the writer.
I was
You
always
know,
the writer, yes.
We
Yep.
talked about that one post.
She just connected the two things. You're like,
yeah, you got it. You caught it and ran with it right away. And you're constant. You probably see me checking out your LinkedIn profile all the time. But outside of when I go to look at your content, I constantly am showing you off.
Yeah.
Because it's like, look at this. Like this is we wrote one post. Like
yeah.
you would constantly,
Just
you'd send
blew
me
up.
stuff
Yeah.
and you'd be like, can you look at it? But you got it right away. And like you just ran with it. And I see, you know, how's that working out?
it's cool, man. I think like everything in my life, I beat myself up over it.
Yeah.
And how I do it and how it looks. And I stew on things. I'm like, was I written as how I wanted it? I have my wife check it on occasion. I do less of that. I'm definitely more confident in what I'm putting out. I don't need as many eyes on it to say, okay, to bless it, so to speak, right before it goes out. So I still stew on certain things, but I do see traction in that world. For me, I often hear from people that, you know, I love your LinkedIn content. You know what's funny also is, and I heard this somewhere. Maybe it was at HubSpot Inbound. It was somewhere, and someone said, post for the, what did they say? The shadow followers or something like that, right? And basically what they were saying was the people who don't click like.
Yep.
Right?
But they're watching you constantly.
Yeah, the people who don't react or the people who don't comment, but they see you on their feed, right? And it's similar to like, I'm a big golf fan. We've golfed together, right? And so I'm dabbling in like watching all these YouTube golf influencers. And it's quite amazing the living they make for themselves doing what they do.
Yeah.
But it's funny because they will say these things at the end of their videos where they're like, subscribe, you know, whatever. We found that some of our fans have been watching us for years and aren't subscribed, right?
Yep. I'm going.
I was that person too, right? I'm that person too on occasion. So subscribe, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's people that do that. There's people that are looking at your content out there that they're never liking it, but they see it and they actually are liking it. They're just not pressing.
They're not pressing the button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you get discouraged by like, oh, this post doesn't seem like it's doing as well or whatever it might be. I try not to get hung up on that at all. I try to make it about like, I try to marry, because I think that social media is a very interesting world, just to put it mildly. And I live on the LinkedIn side more than anything else when it comes to the business. And I do some things with Facebook as it relates to Populist Facebook, but my own personal Facebook I don't do a ton with as it relates to Populist, right? I do share things and stuff like that, but I never wanted to grow that to be like the face of me professionally, I guess. And that was just an opinion I have, because I think there's a lot of people that are well suited to do that, and it makes sense for them to do that.
Yep.
In certain markets they're selling in or whatever it may be. And you know, that could even be just like a bit short-sighted of me to not want to do that. But it's something where I feel like I just want it to be a bit more personal for me. That's all. I think it really just ends there. And so LinkedIn is more of the front business-facing social that I have, and LinkedIn is becoming a bit more like Facebook in some regards.
Yeah.
You may have noticed some of that, but in the main thing I'd point to that way is like trolls.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, yes, there are things that land on Facebook that also land on LinkedIn, but let's maybe be professional in the way that we carry ourselves and comment and do things like that, right?
Yep.
Let's put our best foot forward and let's not troll posts. the way we troll posts on Facebook, I guess. I mean, I'm not a Facebook troll, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen enough of it. And all it takes is like, there's this stupid clickbait crap on, it's all about the NFL right now, right? But, the stupid clickbait on Facebook, you click into the comments and you just, you can just see a plethora of it, right? Now I'm starting to do some of that on what I see on LinkedIn, and it's similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't love that.
Yep.
But what I try and marry on my LinkedIn platform is a little bit of personal and business and how they relate.
Yep.
Because they do relate.
They do relate.
Because I think that sometimes I'll hear things chatter like, oh, LinkedIn is becoming more like Facebook because there are personal posts and you're sharing things about your family or your wife, or there's this picture of you on vacation, or right, like that stuff doesn't belong here. This is for commerce, like buy and sell, like all that type of stuff, right? And I think that that's an old way of thinking about it, because one, as more and more millennials and younger generations enter the workforce, that's what they grew up with, right? With social media. And so it's there, and it's going to continue to be there. And it's changing, obviously.
And people buy into the story.
Yes.
If people weren't following it and liking it, nobody would do it.
Exactly. So you have to marry. If it was just all business posts, nobody would care eventually, right? They'd say, I've seen this a zillion times, a zillion ways. You can only say it so many times, so many ways, right? As it relates to your business. But can you marry the two? One of the things I go back to is like how maybe a principle or a thought or an experience might transcend your career, also in your life, like in your personal life, right? Like those things, like we started at the top of the show talking about slowing down. It's not just in the professional world; it's been in my personal life too, with my kids, and all that they are, right? So. Those topics like that people latch onto. And that's that's the content that a lot of folks want to see. Some folks just want to see business content, and that's fine. And I do some of that, but I don't want to do all of that. And I don't want it to be all here. Look at my personal life either. I want to marry the two.
You do a great job telling parables. Like, it's basically what I look at it like. It's almost like, so like, I'm a big, this whole concept of the podcast is stories are data with soul. And when you're telling a story about whether it's your weightlifting and an experience you've learned from that, or, there's so many different stories that you tell, there's a point to it. There's a message in there. And so it's like, it's enriching people's lives. It's not telling them to buy from Populist. It's not telling them to live a certain way or anything else. Like, get from it what you want.
I think it's interesting to bring that up because I think there's, it's a short story, essentially. It's like a little page long story. And, some people grab onto that. Some people like a little longer form type stories, right? So like longer reading. I kind of find myself in the middle. My wife is always like, if there's a long post, I usually read it. So it's interesting. People gravitate towards different stuff. I try to be a little bit in the middle there. I think there's other people who will just use, similar to like clickbait on other platforms, they will use that on LinkedIn. They will put some controversial, outlandish statement out there. And they will see how many impressions they can get. I'm like, okay, that's a cute experiment. Right? But like, where do you go with that?
Where do you go with it? What do you do with it? What's the point of it? What's the
okay? Now I've clicked on your profile. Now I've looked at you, but like, do I get any farther than that? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's like you're building a following to some degree with every post you put out, and they're not all going to be hits, and they can't all be hits. And if you get caught up on that, you'd never post in the first place.
Well, and I'd love to know what you've seen from this, but I always say that the hardest thing to do as a salesperson is to become as a salesperson or an entrepreneur that's selling is to become a person in the eyes of our prospect. We're knocking on the doors, we're making the cold calls. All we are is that salesperson. They think of us as a salesperson. And so from that content standpoint, that's why I love telling the story, releasing who we are, having that, like all that, because now if we pull in, if we go prospect somebody, and it takes 15 times on the average to 15 follow-ups in order to land a piece of business. So 15 times. And so people think maybe that's 15 cold calls. Well, that's, are you getting a hold of them 15 times? How about if you knocked on their door, you meet them, you have a conversation, you go find them on LinkedIn, you connect. Because now, what's the first thing they do when you connect with them on LinkedIn?
They check you out.
They check out your profile, right?
They check. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's what I do. And most of the time, especially on LinkedIn, I end up like being disappointed by the content that I'm.
Right.
But if I would like open up yours,
Yeah.
I get to know who you are right away.
Yeah.
And so if that resonates with me, like I want to know more. And so
Yeah.
like all of a sudden now that wall's knocked down and you're a person in their eyes.
I think and it's as you're saying that, I'm thinking about like, okay, what has LinkedIn been used for? Selling and finding a job, right? But just take both of those, and you telling your story helps both, right? I mean, someone who's looking to hire for said position, that could help them know about you. Now, yeah, you're still going to have to go through the hiring process, but now you're a human. You're not just some random application that was submitted or some, and there's a lot to be said on that piece too. Like getting a job is like selling. You're selling yourself. If you're not following up and saying, hey, where's this at? I'm still very interested in this or whatever it is, right? Like you don't just go interview and then
hopefully they call.
Wait, right? I mean, hate
and
that.
if you're applying for a sales job and that's your role, like you're probably not going to do a good job, do well in that role anyway.
100%.
So.
Yeah, as it specific to sales, absolutely. But then, selling, it's like, okay, just like you said, human. It humanizes you. It brings you, you're not just this face or this signature on an email, right? That's you're a person with 2 kids and a wife and 2
son,
dogs.
You're somebody's dad. You're
100%.
somebody's,
I mean, I think that's how my about actually reads.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a son, I'm a brother, husband, business leader, all these things, right? All of those, I'm all of that before I'm the title that's up at the top of my,
Yep.
wherever you're working. And it's different for folks who are not working in a family business who maybe are looking for their next career move. Obviously, you see those different type of headings up there where they're making claims as to who they are, and that's you should do that. But
But I love because there's the vulnerable pieces too, and we've talked a lot about kids, for example. But then you share like struggles and challenges you've had with your kid. Not everything's like bubbles and roses, right? There's life that happens.
No, man, I think that's what like social media just becomes a highlight reel. I think it can become one of 2 things, honestly, and I don't mean this in a bad way or in the wrong way. But it's either a highlight reel. And it's been a highlight reel for me in the past at times. When I was weightlifting, like all I ever posted was the good lifts, right? The big ones, the ones that people got fired up about. But then it can also become a woe is me platform. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, right? I mean, like, because we all go through it as humans. That's the human condition. So we all go through it. And it can become, if you're not careful, it can become a woe is me. And I think it's actually a dangerous mindset to think that you need to put it out there all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe what younger generations even struggle with. You're now seeing commercials about like social media and parents saying no to social media and things like that, right? Because we're aware more now than ever probably that the effect it has on the mentality of a young mind and the development of a young mind and all the instant gratification and the likes and the, need to be accepted and all this stuff, right? I mean, part of that is just naturally the human element condition. But so it can become one of those 2 things. Well, I think it should be a little bit, it should blend them. You should share your struggles in some capacity. At least I want to share those in some way because my life is not a highlight reel. And I doubt yours is too. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's okay. You don't have to put that out there if you don't want to, if it's personal for you. And, social media is its own thing for everybody. It can be what you want it to be. LinkedIn can be what you want it to be, but I share a bit of both. And I think sharing both has just, in some ways, it helps me think about both and what they mean and where I'm at in my life and the challenges I face with my kids and their epilepsy and their seizures and the fact they never sleep. It feels like, oh my gosh, dude, I thought in the fire service, Working on shift and being woke up like multiple
That'd be the
times a
worst it'd
night. That'd be the worst it'd be, right? Or also thought that maybe I got some training under my belt as far as that goes. No, I'm also like 8 years, almost 10 years older now, and the more the more it happens, the less easy it gets, man. Like I made that post not that long ago about I've spent hours in my oldest son's bed at night because he's just waking up. And for the reasons I listed, it's multiple reasons. It's not always a seizure. Sometimes it is. Other times I think it's bad dreams. Other times I think, maybe he didn't get the exercise he needed that day, and so he's restless or something because he's not yet walking. So it's hard to exude that energy a certain way, right? You think about sidebar, like social media can be dangerous as you use it to compare yourself and your situation to other people. 100%. So that's like very dangerous to go down that road. My wife and I have been there. Yep. I think I often said to my wife in the first couple of years of raising my kids that I wish we were raising them in the 90s when you couldn't look on Facebook and see what your friends' kids are doing. That's just hard. I mean, and that's just the human element to it. You go there, and if you stay there, it doesn't end well for you. Just spirals and, gets worse. And so, I go to God with that. And it's not been an easy road, but it's God telling me to slow down, man, in a lot of ways. And he's teaching me that, right? Your faith, it's tested through trials. It's easy to believe in God and, think that all these blessings are in your life when things are smooth. But will you call on him when they're not smooth? And will you be faithful when they're not smooth? When the bumps in the road are there, when your kid's in the hospital bed multiple times inside a year, when your wife is in tears because you don't know what the hell's going on and you want to give answers, but you don't have answers. And you're asking for answers, and you might not get the answers that you want when you want them. That's the impatient piece, right?
Absolutely.
So you grow that way. And I just think, back to the social media piece of it or the LinkedIn piece of it, I think if you're going to be on there I just believe if I'm going to show some of the good, I got to show some of the hard stuff too. Because other people are going through it too,
Well, and I think the dangers of just being like everything's going great and everybody's posting everything's going great and they don't take that time to be vulnerable is because they do have vulnerable moments. They do have times in their life that's life.
Yeah.
All of us, every single one of us have our challenges, and we don't necessarily know what people are walking through.
Right.
You don't want to cross that line of the woe is me that everything you post is like, oh my God, my life is so horrible.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
come on, look at how bad listening. This is. Yep.
But when you see somebody that does seem to have it together, that seems that, life is going on great, God's blessed them, all these things.
Yeah.
When they share something vulnerable, it gives you hope.
Yeah.
It gives you hope that.
Right. And I think back to the blessing piece, and my dad has challenged me on this. It's like, where are you looking for the blessing? Because what you may see as a challenge or a hardship or a trial may actually be the blessing in and of itself. My kids are blessings. They've taught me so much as a dad, as a person. I've probably grown more by way of them than anything in my life, right? With social media, you can look across the phone and see someone you went to high school with or someone from a different place in your life that's got a kid that's the same age and they're doing all these things that you wish your kid was doing. Back to the scripture, that's a certain jealousy there that it's you got to nip that. You got to snuff that out. You got to go to God with that, right? Yeah. I've been there, man. I'm like, why him?
Yeah.
Why?
Yep.
Why them? Where's that get you?
Yeah.
It's just living in the dumps that way. Mad at life. What kind of lot is that to have, you know? I mean, the thing is, it's like this is who they are. This is who my kids are, right?
Yep.
And I wouldn't trade them for the world. Do I wish that, you know, but you can wish your whole life away. Right? You can't
Instead of
live
being in
there.
that moment and enjoying them.
Yeah, exactly. Just slow down, because here's the thing. He will walk at some point and the whole world will change. You know, the youngest will sleep at some point and the whole world will change. But you'll have other challenges then.
Yep.
You'll have other tests. You know, it's these ways, it's the trials that, and here I am preaching, right? But it's one thing to say it. It's very hard to do it and see it through, right? But the trials are what bring you closer to God. Without those, you're just cruising, man. And you can say that, you know, I'm blessed. But, you know, will you say you're blessed when they're in the hospital bed, when they're in and out of neurology appointments? You know, is it lip service to God, or are you doing it? Back to what Populist does with their customers, man. Let's bring it full circle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, are you like, is it just lip service? Are you you know, I often wonder this. I think it's great that athletes today are more now so than any time in, you know, my recent memory, are glorifying God on a national stage. I'm not here to judge whether it's lip service or not, but I hope it's not, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the human condition is to do that when things are good. It's easy to say it when you're on Easy Street or when you're in the winner's circle. I mean, no, you should say it when you're in the winner's circle, but it's easier to say it.
It's easier.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, this has been a beautiful conversation.
So glad we did this.
Thanks a lot for coming.
Appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure.